Yo, what's up guys? We got Pokeaim here. Today we have some crazy tier changes for Pokemon Sword and Shield. How the mighty have fallen. Before Tyranitar, though Tyranitar is back in its rightful place in OU, but this time Excadrill has fallen to UU. Skarmory has fallen back to UU. Hydreigon has fallen to UU. I think this is for one of the first times this generation. I could be wrong about that, but I mean in the past Hydreigon was an excellent UU Pokemon, but this time it kind of had like the staple in OU for a while now. But a lot of Pokemon have fallen and some Pokemon have risen up as well, so we're just kind of going to go over those Pokemon right now, and I'll have timestamps for things like that, so I'll go over the rises first and then we'll talk about the drops as well, and we'll also just be going over the usage stats in general. But this is the usage stats for September, so even though you see Excadrill at number 37 here, the tier shifts are based on 3 months usage, not just this month. So if had it been based on this month's usage, Excadrill would have still been OU basically by usage. But if we look at the top 10 Pokemon, Landorus at number 1, not surprising. Pulse at number 2. I love that Pulse is still able to keep itself up there, whether it be Specs or honestly Specs is the set I see the most right now. Sometimes Bandit or Dragon Dance. Corviknight at number 3, Heatran at number 4, Ferrothorn at number 5, Garchomp, Weavile, Tapu Fini, Kartana, and Lele at number 10. About damn time Lele is this high. I've been preaching Lele was one of the best Pokemon since we had Pheromosa and Magearna in the tier. Period. But it's about damn time it has risen up. But the top 10, I think I agree completely with this list. Weavile is incredible. What they did for it with Triple Axle and Heavy Duty Boots is awesome. You would think that because this Pokemon lost Pursuit, it would be really bad, and I think people thought that at first as well. But as the metagame has started to settle, and I mean, you see Dragapult, Landorus, Garchomp in the top of the tier, and just mons that don't. I mean, nobody likes knockoff in this generation, right? Or in Pokemon in general, nobody likes losing their item, and Ice is just so nice. Tapu Fini is there. I mean, it checks a good chunk of the Big 10, or the top 10 rather, not the Big 10. But Cart is incredible too. SD, Bandit, Scarf, they're all really good. Specs Lele is probably one of the best sets and one of the best special attackers in the damn tier. And Heatran is insane. Heatran isn't even, I don't know what Heatran is. Heatran, I kind of think of it like almost like Dugtrio or Magnezone. Like it's just it's a trap. It beats Pokemon it's not supposed to beat, right? Just based on typing alone, it beats Pokemon it's not supposed to beat. But I mean, it does it. It does it. That. So I agree with top 10 completely. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the top 10. In general, I think this just makes a lot of sense. They're just incredible Pokemon. But let us go towards the rises first. So, first off, we have Victini and Blacephalon rising to OU. Now, they were UUBL, so this does not affect UU at all. In fact, the second layer you see right there does affect UU, but they were UUBL. Let's talk about Blacephalon first. Specs Blacephalon is probably one of the strongest special attackers as well, next to Lele. In the tier, it's stronger than Dragapult. The set is Shadow Ball, Overheat, Flamethrower, and Trick typically, just because the reason you use Overheat is just, it's a nuke, right? You'll pick up KOs on bulky Pokemon or 2-hit KOs on like even like Spadef Mandibuzz and things like that as well, or like mixed defensive Mandibuzz. But it's one of those Pokemon that just has no solid switch-ins, especially when it comes to balance. Like if your resistance or your quote-unquote answer to this is like Fizz Def Toxapex, you're going to be overwhelmed by Shadow Ball, especially if it gets Spadef drops. So if you actually look again at the top 10 usage, just being able to spam Shadow Ball, even just chipping away at Heatran is incredibly big. But it just gets free switch-ins, I believe, especially with Teleport and whatnot. And it's one of those mons that actually threatens, like the Teleport duo of both Slowbros, doesn't care about that. It can just nuke a lot with just fire, with Overheat plus. I think Overheat's better than Fire Blast, by the way. I think the stronger power and the accuracy is really nice as well. And just being able to nuke like a Landorus or something from full, if it's Fizz Def, that is. If it's Spadef, obviously you don't nuke it. But again, just being that Specs Pokemon that can just get in and click buttons, it's just so good versus balance. So good, in my opinion. We have Victini, which has risen up as well. And it's interesting because like Victini is can do a few things, right? The mixed wall breaker set is pretty nice, especially with heavy duty boots. With like Glaciate, because obviously Glaciate lets you deal with Lando, it lets you deal with Garchomp, whereas you still have Bolt Strike to help hit Fini. You still have V-Cray or Blue Flare, it depends, or Blue Flare to do massive damage, and of course Psychic, depending on the set you're actually using to help mess up Toxapex. So it's a good mixed Wall Breaker, even though it is weak with base 100 across the board, which is crazy that we're at a point in Pokemon time that base 100 across the board is considered weak. But it still does plenty of damage. I know there's some teams on the ladder that run Scarf Final Gambit as well, and I know there's a few Sun teams on the ladder that also run Choice Band Victini as well as Choice Scarf too. Like it's a good wall breaker, and I think it's also pretty decent considering how good Hail is right now. Hail is probably at its best. I believe Hail is the best weather currently. If I had to go, teams based on weather, right? Obviously, it ain't sand because look at my boy Excadrill and UU. But I believe Hail is the best weather just because of art result. Plus, obviously, Alolan Ninetales, what they provide for the team. So Victini is pretty cool because with heavy duty boots, it actually can check Hail teams really, really well. Especially the ones that are like that. Plus, it's a decent Kyurem check as well. It's a Tapu Lele check. It's a Volcarona check all in one, right? So it's one of those Pokemon that with heavy duty boots that can actually check a plethora of Pokemon in the metagame. So very makes sense why it went up. And whereas Blacephalon is just nuking every Pokemon in the OU tier. So you have Buzzwole moved from UU to OU. This is a really, really big change for UU because, well, one, Buzzwole would have been one of the premier Excadrill answers, but Buzzwole is a top tier Pokemon in the UU tier. I believe it was either S rank or A plus, if I'm not mistaken. Before the let me actually look. It was A plus. Yeah, it was A plus rank, right? It was A plus rank, so it was one of the best Pokemon in the tier. I saw Bandit, I saw Rocky Helmet defensive, I saw Scarf. Just be able to hit like Salamence with Ice Punch and things like that, or like Leech Life variants, which deal with defensive threats like Tangrowth or Uniclus. And I saw obviously Earthquake for like Age Slash and things like that. So this is a pretty big move because the tier definitely shifts. I mean, the tier is going to shift a lot because you see the drops, and we'll be discussing those as well. But this is such a big change because, again, this was one of the top Pokemon in the tier. And one of the top physical walls that kept a lot of things in check, like Diggersby and stuff like that. So, but just looking at the OU tier itself, I know that defensive Buzzwole has been rising up as Kartana and Weavile are obviously pretty nasty, so it's a good little check to them. I mean, you guys know what Buzzwole does, right? It checks the offensive physical threats. I have seen more offensive Buzzwoles running around as well, with Earthquake to deal with Toxapex, and I've even seen Poison Jab for Clefable. But I'm glad I'm glad it makes sense that it's back in OU. I think, especially with the top 10 being what it is, and even with Arctazol rising as well. Like defensive Buzzwole can beat Arctazol if it comes in on a Bolt Beak, or if it's in versus it, because it just roosts and Blizzard doesn't do too much, and plus they can miss after Hail ends. But with the rise in Bisharp, it makes sense a lot, in my opinion, and with Rillaboom slowly creeping back up to a top tier threat. Not that Rillaboom ever really wasn't a top tier threat, but there was a point in the metagame where Rillaboom was broken, right? Like legitimately broken, probably even ban worthy. And right now, and then it slowed off a little bit, and then it's just cut off in usage a little bit, but now it's slowly but surely climbing back up, as you can see at number 19 right there. So again, being able to both check a lot of these threats defensively, but also put on some nice offensive pressure, I think is really good for this mod. Pelipper moved up to OU as well, so another big thing because Rain was allowed in the UU tier, and Rain had Pokemon like Seismitoad and Barraskewda, obviously, that could use it. I believe also Kingdra as well, but don't quote me on that. I don't think Kingdra was UUBL. Yep. So Rain obviously had these giant threats as well. Azu, Keldeo for one, right? Keldeo was probably one of the biggest. I loved Keldeo in the Rain because you beat all your counters, right? You beat Amoonguss, you beat Rotoms, which is Hydro Pumps, right? You Oko Celesteela with Specs Hydro Pump in the Rain. So this is a big change. Not only are Rain teams not as viable because Politoed isn't as good as Pelipper, and by that I mean you can tell why Politoed isn't as good as Pelipper, but just to go into a little bit of detail, doesn't have reliable recovery like Pelipper has in Roost. Doesn't have knockoff like Pelipper has, even though they barely use it. Doesn't have defog support like Pelipper has. And most importantly, the big one, can't come in and then U-turn out like Pelipper does to provide, help for your team. So maybe we'll see Politoed rise to UU, or at least have some usage in UU on Rain teams. But for the most part, Pelipper going back to OU, especially with Barraskewda rising up as well. I think this had more so to do with the other 2 months than it obviously does this month. Because if you actually look at this month, Pelipper is number 32. There is no Barraskewda in OU. So technically, Barraskewda wouldn't be here if it was only based on the September usage stats. But there's no Barraskewda on this list whatsoever. But maybe with the fact that people are using Hail again, people are trying to counter with Rain, which is kind of hard considering Freeze Dry knocks out Pelipper and stuff like that. But Barraskewda, I think, is still just a great Pokemon. I think Urshifu was really good on Rain too, and again, just as it's the main Rain abuser. And whereas Ninetales moved with OU, like I said, Hail is at its best right now. This is the best Hail has been, at least maybe not right now, but like within the past 3 months, this is the best that Hail has been, and just. Bolt Beak Archazult, the Slush Rush is just a blessing, and obviously you need a Hail setter, and I'm sorry, but Auroras and Abomasnow are not going to cut it in the OU tier, whereas Ninetales has the speed, has the Fairy typing, so actually has some utility being immune to Dragon, has Freeze Dry, so it can threaten Waters, and most importantly, fast Aurora Veil. So not only getting up Hail, but also supporting your team with that Aurora Veil. Diggersby is a UU, I mean, it's a giant threat. It's a normal ground type that can also beat Celesteela with Thunder Punch or Fire Punch respectively, or knockoff, and can U-turn around. It's a good Scarfer, or was a good Scarfer in the U tier. It was top tier as well. And losing Buzzwole actually makes Diggersby even better, right? It makes Diggersby even better. However, very soon it's going to have to compete with another ground type. But maybe we'll get into that in a sec. But yeah, I think Diggersby was a really solid Pokemon in UU, though it wasn't, I guess based on rank, it wasn't that high, because you have a lot of ground types competing with you as physical attackers, like Mammo, Rhyperior, obviously. And then higher up, you have like the best ground type in the tier, which is Crocodile. But Diggersby just provides different, right? It could be Scarf, it can Ice Punch as well, and can knock out Salamence. So there's a lot. It can be Bandit as well. Seismitoad was UU. I mean, considering Rotom is one of the best Pokemon, and so were Keldeo in the tier, it made sense defensively why Seismitoad right up, but offensively it also makes sense considering Rain was used in the tier. It's actually funny because like this Mon is in the same rank. This Pelipper and like Barraskewda were all considered like the same rank when it came to you. Rank doesn't mean much, it's just people's opinions based on a Pokemon. But I like viability rankings because it helps, especially if you want to build a team in the metagame, it helps you kind of look at what people perceived to be the best Pokemon, and maybe they see all these Pokemon, right? These physical attackers, like let's say the best Pokemon in tier were like Barraskewda and like Gyarados and Mamoswine. What's the common trend? They're physical attackers. Like, oh, okay, cool. I'm about to use Pyukumuku and beat all of them. So that's where also niche Pokemon rise up, or the viability of other Pokemon rise up, because you can see what Pokemon like that. So from NUBL, so banned from NU, which I mean makes sense. This Mon was. I'm not gonna have a Lucario in the NU tier, though. I don't know, man. That over here look crazy too. But from banned NU to the RU meta. So if you actually look at RU usage stats, because we can, you can see right here, the best Pokemon. There's a Fairy at number 2. There's an Umbreon at number 4. Ooh, nice little Umbreon at number 4. Number 10 is Galarian Weezing, and then you have like Metagross, Mimikyu, Seismitoad, which. Actually pretty big that Seismitoad lost RU, or like Seismitoad is gone from RU, considering it is considered, I mean Barraskewda and obviously Ninetales as well, but it is considered the premier water ground in this tier, especially with Zarude being gone from way before. It's kind of sad that they lose that, but it makes sense why Lucario would rise up. I mean, just looking at the stats in general, this is a decent for Lucario, right? Close Combat, Meteor Mash is just hella strong, even Bullet Punch. Flygon being the best Pokemon in a tier, that's awesome. That is completely awesome. So, again, just your standard physical attacker, I would say. I'm actually going to look at viability rankings real quick, too, where they actually rank Lucario. I'm assuming it's like B or A-. Okay, A-. A- makes sense as well. It's interesting, too, because Celebi is also, I mean, you'll find, we'll talk about Celebi in a second, but we'll actually talk about right now, considering they're both RU. But Celebi is considered one of the better Pokemon in their tier, too. Having Aura Sphere, obviously, Nasplot, Psychic. I think its ability to actually overwhelm its checks. Like, for instance, Crobat beats Celebi because Crobat can U-turn and it can Brave Bird, but Celebi can also Psychic it at the same time. So, a nice answer to a nice ground resistant tier, though obviously you have to worry about Flygon U-turning out. But also a Pokemon that can check Cobalion, can check Metagross. It's just solid, faster than Nidoqueen, faster than Roserade, one of the premier spikers in the tier. So And also, more importantly, like I said, checking circuitry, all sets, I think is really big for Celebi. From P to NU, we have, I never know what the hell that Silvally type is, but I'm assuming it's Steel. I always assume it's Steel. Like, can you guys put the typing on these? It looks Steel, but I can't tell. It's a damn pixel. But from PU to NU, now I'm not sure how much this affects PU. I remember when I played PU, and that little monkey was annoying, but I do remember playing it, and it was a very annoying Pokemon in the tier. Just because all I do is you turn around and knock off and stuff like that. But from what I remember, but in terms of NU, I love what Passimian brings to the NU tier. So if you look at the NU stats real quick, we'll just go through it really quickly. But number one is Talonflame. If you watched the live that I did with Rabia, I mean, while Talonflame can come in for the most part on Passimian, doesn't care too much about knockoff, close combat U-turn, and can also burn it with Flame Body. Talonflame being a defensive number one, by the way, not offensive. Rock Slide is something that can snipe it. Bronzong doesn't like knockoffs. It's faster than non-Scarf Rotom. And if you go even more, obviously, you see Starmie at number 10 in usage, but being a fighter that can threaten Psychics and things like that, I think is really good. So I think it's a really good Scarfer in the tier. I think it's alright at Band as well, but I think what it really excels at is just a pivot, just a Scarfer that's a pivot that also doesn't have to care so much about Talonflame coming in because, you know, when Rock Slide, it's gone. Obviously, if it gets burnt, though, it makes a difference. So I like that change for the NU tier. Silvally-Steel, I believe that is Silvally-Steel. I saw a lot of Swords Dance sets being used, and I think Ravi and I fought a lot too, but with Swords Dance, Flame Charge, Multi-Attack, and Rock Slide. Rock Slide obviously being that move for Talonflame, but being able to set up in front of Bronzong if they're not body press, and also in front of the Fairy types you have in the tier 2, and just defensively, you're just really solid being a Steel type. Again, another one that there was a team that was spamming the ladder with Swords and Silvally that Rabbi and I fought a lot with, like Whimsicott and stuff like that. So, just your standard Fairy check. Again, makes sense. From ZU to PU, we have Audino, Drampa, and Jellicent. Again, when I played PU a little bit with Rabbi, and we'll be playing more, Drampa was incredibly annoying to switch into. Like, wow, one of the best Pokemon in the tier is Gigalith, which is a really good switch into Drampa. It's still incredible on the spec sets and also providing glare. So it makes sense why it goes up. I think it also makes sense why like Jellicent would rise up too. Considering Silvally-Steel is some of the better Pokemon in the tier. But it's also like a nice check to Charizard and Gigalith, which is probably the biggest thing. I also like the fact that Drampa doesn't care about Serena's grass moves. Obviously it has to worry about both high jump kick and triple axle. And then Audino being one of the better defensive Pokemon, providing wish support, obviously knockoff, again, making sense why this Pokemon goes up. I think the final tier shift is really cute from Little Cup to PU. This doesn't mean you can't use Ferroseed in Little Cup. In fact, Little Cup usage doesn't actually affect anything at all, right, in terms of the other stuff. But I just think it's cute that they have that here. But, I mean, Ferroseed usually finds its way in either PU or NU anyway. It's just that because power creep is where it is at, Ferroseed is not there. But basically, it does the exact same thing as Ferrothorn, just less offensive. And Leech Seed's a knockoff. It spikes and maybe a little Gyro Ball, depending on what threat is in the tier to do damage. So, this is where the drops get really interesting because this is going to be a lot of fun. I think the NU drops are really cool. I think the UU drops are really cool too. So, one of the... what the hell? Okay. One of the things is Hawlucha moving down from OU to UUBL, and I think, honestly, if you look at the top usage, I think Feeny being as good as it is, and obviously a great check, Weavile being as good as it is, Garchomp can both be offensive, and there are people running Tank Chomp too, Landers being number 1, Corviknight, which doesn't die to +2 Hawlucha as well. It just makes sense that that mon would be there, especially with Clef and Toxapex number 12 and 13. Zapdos still being as good as it is. Dragonite still being good. I just feel like while Lucha is still good, and I think that Stone Edge variants can still do it, I think it needs a lot more support to actually be able to sweep than it did before. I really do, especially with Slowbro picking up in usage again as well. Whereas before it had kind of dropped off, and for Slowking, because Slowking was a better Lele check, and then And I'm talking about regular Slowking, not Galarian Slowking. Galarian Slowking's still good too. But I just think that it just doesn't really have as much of a place. Excuse me, I'm a little tired. It doesn't really have too much of a place, and like with birds being as good as they are in this metagame, and Clef being right there too, both Unaware and Magic Guard being viable, and Unaware being even more viable now because it can run soft boiled and it has heavy duty boots too. Like I just think Lucha kind of just fell off. Do I think it's still good at Pokemon? I think it's a really good Pokemon. Do not get me wrong. But right now it's fallen to UBL because it was banned from the UU tier. Now this is where things get crazy. The OU to UU. First off, Excadrill has fallen to the UU tier. I'm going to tell you why I believe Excadrill fell. I'm also going to tell you how I think it's going to do in the UU tier as well. Because you might think, oh man, that's Excadrill, bro. That's ban worthy. You might be. I think you're wrong. Personally, I think you're wrong. But let me at least explain myself why. So from OU to UU, Excadrill. First off, let's look at the OU stats. Let's just look at OU Pokemon that can beat Drill and that kind of invalidate Sand. Landorus is at number 1. That doesn't really matter too much because Landorus and Excadrill have both of them competing in OU for generations. That doesn't matter as much. I think the big one is number 3, Corviknight. Corviknight kind of just throws off Drill. And if you're using Drill plus Magnezone and you're on a Sand team as well, you're already kind of opening yourself up to not being able to check a lot in the metagame. Now, you can have an offensive Sand team, but if you're using an offensive Sand team, you're using it with Magnezone, like, screw it, bro. At that point, you might as well use Gravity so you can actually click Earthquake with Excadrill immediately instead of just Drill. But, like, again, if your Sand team has to have Excadrill plus Magnezone in order to actually deal with Corvi, and then at that point, you have to pick between Tyranitar or, obviously, Hippowdon, you're opening yourself up insanely to Chomp if you go the Tyranitar route, to Kyurem regardless, right? Because Kyurem is just as good as it is, right? No Heatran switch-ins, even if you go Spadef Hippo, if that thing gets toxic, it's a wrap, type of thing. But I think that Corviknight really invalidates that. But I also think that Zapdos being as good as it is, Hippowdon being as good as it is, Rillaboom still being decent in the tier, Urshifu being as great as it is, which is just a natural check to Drill. Again, none of these Pokemon like to take Life Orb Earthquake, besides Zapdos, obviously. But none of these Pokemon like to take Life Orb Earthquake, but they still can beat it in a 1v1 scenario. And then the fact that both Hail is probably one of the best weathers, and I can actually have a Sweeper that doubles its speed that doesn't have to worry about Landorus, that doesn't have to worry about Corviknight, aka Arctozolt. Or whereas when it comes to weather and you're using Pelipper, Barraskewda has the high speed already and can flip turn out and can actually do damage like that. And even, obviously, Buzzwole climbing up back to OU too. I just think that Excadrill just isn't in a place in the metagame right now. And that's crazy because I think that initially, after Dynamax ban, I think Excadrill was one of the best Pokemon, personally. I do. And I also think during Dynamax, Excadrill was one of the best Pokemon too. But to see everything rise up as well, Excadrill just doesn't have the ability to come in. And if you're going to use Excadrill and you want to use Rapid Spin on that, then you have to waste a turn Rapid Spinning when everything has heavy duty boots or everything has Rocky Helmet or whatever. And Corviknight, you're Rapid Spinning, you're taking damage even if you're running leftovers. I just think it doesn't have what it takes right now to sweep in the OU tier, personally. I do think if you want to use Excadrill in OU, you got to use Gravity. And I know that sounds like a gimmick, and it is, but I also think it's also Excadrill's best chance of doing something. So, UU now. UU has opened up, and you're like, okay, well, there's no Rillaboom in UU, there's no Corviknight, right? There's no Zapdos, there's no Hippowdon. What can UU throw at Excadrill to throw it off? Well, real quick, just let's look at the usage stats. We can go through the OU, we can literally go through the usage and talk about Pokemon that can check or beat it. Defensive Como, number 1. Crocodile would Intimidate. Salamence would Intimidate. Celesteela might not have what it takes to be OU this generation. I still think this Pokemon is a little bit underrated in OU, and I really think that by the time the generation ends, whenever that time is, maybe we'll get all Pokemon back. Who knows after BDSP, and if they give us another DLC for Sword and Shield later next year or whatever it is. I still think Celesteela has what it takes to rise up to OU, and people are kind of sleeping on it, personally. Rotom, if it's not a Sand Force variant. Amoonguss can take Earthquakes as well. Buzzwole was in the tier, but Buzzwole obviously left the tier too. But those are just Pokemon defensively and even offensively that can check that Pokemon too. Not to mention, it's not on the top 10, but Tangrowth, one of the best Excadrill checks ever, is also in the damn tier, right? And then more offensive checks. First off, Rain is still good, but they obviously lost Pelipper, so I mean maybe Barraskewda and stuff is not gonna, well, Barraskewda's OU right now, but like Seismitoad and stuff isn't gonna be the greatest there too. And not only that, it has to compete with like really good offensive ground types. Obviously, Crocodile being one of the best in tier, I think that's not going to change too much. You still have Zydog as well, which can actually do what Excadrill wishes it could do and click Earthquake on flying types, which is pretty big. So, while I do think Excadrill is going to be pretty cool, and I think that Mold Breaker sets, I basically think that Mold Breaker sets are going to be better than Sand Rush sets, at least initially. I do. Because being able to Mold Breaker, Earthquake, Rotom, but also being able to Rapid Spin support for your team, being able to beat Jirachi 1v1, being the number 2 Pokemon in the tier, even Toxic variants allowing you to wear down Tangrowth and stuff like that, and just being so strong naturally. Like you have over 300 attack naturally, your Earthquake's still going to hurt, so I kind of like that a lot. But I don't think Sand's going to be as crazy as it could be. However, feel free to prove me wrong and use your Gigalith Sand. Go ahead. Prove me wrong. And you make Excadrill the ban-worthy Pokemon that you might think it is. I don't personally think it's ban-worthy immediately. But, yeah. Hydreigon has fallen from OU to UU. Now, there was a point in the metagame where Hydreigon was one of the best dragons. Or at least a top-tier dragon. Why? Because defensively it checked Heatran, but also offensively it could Nasty Plot, Draco Meteor, Dark Pulse, and Flash Cannon and beat every Pokemon in the tier. Unfortunately, this was a time before Tapu Fini existed in the metagame. So fast forward a little bit, and Hydreigon kind of doesn't do what it needs to do, right? If I want a dragon type with good dual typing that can actually break through fairies and stuff, I'm going to use Garchomp's Earthquake. I'm going to use Dragapult's Ghost Stab, right? I'm going to use Kyurem's Freeze Dry. So if in terms of dragons that can actually do something, those guys are way better at breaking or offer more defensive value or offensive utility or whatever it is, right? Dragon that has dual wing beat, can DD Roost, can also defog, can be Dragonite's Ice Punch to break through Lanners, right? So while Nasty Plot Hydreigon might be good versus balanced matchups, first off, everything that you set up on can U-turn on you for the most part or do massive damage. And even then, you're getting Revenge Killed very easily. I just think that like if you're using Nasty Plot sets, you can't fit Nasty Plot Roost because you can't use your set defensively because like if you're using Nasty Plot 3 attacks, which you kind of have to because you can't beat Fairy types at all. If you come in on Magnastorm and Heatran, you're already taking damn near 50% from Magnastorm plus Stealth Rock plus the damage after from Magnastorm. This is assuming they hit. And then if you Nasty Plot up in order to beat them, you die. Right? Earth Power is not going to knock out Spidef Heatran even from a Life Orb set as long as it's Spidef, fully Spidef. Weavile still Revenge Kills and comes in on both Earth Power and Dark Pulse, obviously. Draco, Life Orb Draco is obviously a threat, though. I do think that Specs and Life Orb sets are still pretty decent, especially with the proper support, but I think that if I want a dragon that can do something for me, there's just way better options in the tier, especially from Special Dragons. Now, in terms of the UU tier, it's been a minute since Hydreigon has been UU, and before, in previous generations, you didn't have the Nasty Plot. But Specs, Life Orb sets, and Choice Scarf sets were really good. However, in UU, this might be a mon that's too much for the tier. Legitimately. Like, I can think of 2 Pokemon off the top of my head that beat it. And that's Primarina and Chansey. Those are like off the top of my head that initially can beat it, can switch in and do that too. I wouldn't count Togekiss in the list because if it's Nasty Plot, Flash Cannon, it's a threat. But if you look at the UU tier again, just Nasty Plot, Draco, Dark Pulse. Your Dragon doesn't care about Aegislash. You have Fire Blast in your just even spec sets, right? Even spec sets because the Fairy types in the UU tier, as I already mentioned, right? You have Primarina, which I mean you can U-turn on or wear down or use other Pokemon to overwhelm it. You have Azumarill, which doesn't have reliable recovery. Right, you have Togekiss, which is weak to Flash Cannon. So, like, this is just a mon that can actually potentially overwhelm. And I like it. I like it a lot. I think the Nasty Plot's going to be cool. I think Specs is going to be cool. I don't know if it'll be banned from the tier because I think switching in is going to be too insane to it. And even Revenge Killing it at points is going to be maybe a little bit nasty. But Crocodile's Close Combat Count is in the tier. It's just going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be one of the mons that can actually take it. I think the Nasty Plot, Dark Pulse Roost, you might not even need Draco. Or the Nasty Plot 3 attack and Specs are going to be the biggest ones. So, let me know your thoughts on Hydreigon. I'm actually pretty excited to see how that Pokemon turns out and what ends up happening for it if Nasty Plot is just too much for it. Mandibuzz has fallen from the OU to U tier. There was a time where Mandibuzz was checking a million Pokemon in the OU tier. Rillaboom. It was checking Dragonite. It was checking Dragapult. But I think that with Dragapult going back to being choice specs again, Landorus is running Spadef and Toxic, Garchomp's running Toxic, Weavile being as popular as it is, it not able to do anything to Tapu Fini, it not being able to do anything to Tapu Lily, losing the Heat Rank, because even if it knocks it, if I can Magma Storm and then taunt your Mandibuzz so you can't do anything, and then I can sweep you at Spec Shadow Ball, you might have won the battle, but you haven't won the war, you know? Like, you won the 1v1 with Heat Rank, but you have not won the game. So I just don't think it does enough. I think it's really easy to get knocked off. I think it doesn't provide too much support. And while you can Roost and Defog and U-turn, a Pokemon that has to worry about healing itself and doing its job just not as great, right? At least Zapdos has more offensive pressure and also defensive utility and can static, right? Like if you're coming in on Rillaboom and you static them, that Rillaboom's effectively dead, in a sense. So it just being Fairy being as good as they are, Arctozolt being as good as it is, I just think that it's not the metagame for that Pokemon. However, when it comes to Yu, at least being able to check certain Pokemon, decent Jirachi check, right? Can come in on Amoonguss, which I think is really good for that Pokemon. It's like a default on Amoonguss. Amoonguss would just run Toxic though. Like if Mandibuzz becomes, they might even be running Toxic right now. I know when I played Yu, the games I played were it was Spore, Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, and they ran Foul Play for Aegislash. I could be wrong though. But, yeah, they'll just run Toxic if Mandibuzz becomes too much of a threat to the tier. But it is a decent check to Salamence, so a lot of them are special. Probably just gets set up on from Zarude. Tangrowth will just run Toxic or Sludge Bomb Poison if it really wants to. I don't know. I think it has potential to be decent, but I don't think it's going to be anything game-breaking in the tier. I just think it loses to way too many of the Pokemon. And I think that we will probably see Mandibuzz fall down to RDU personally. Skarmory fell from O to UU. Another one, man. In terms of defensive Steel-type bird, Corviknight provides U-turn support, which is nice. It's better special defensive without compromising its physical defense. By that I mean if Skarmory wants to be good special defensively, it can't invest in defense, but whereas Corviknight just has enough overall and its HP is higher to the point where it can actually tank hits better on both sides without dropping certain things. I do think that Iron Defense Spike sets or Toxic sets are still really good though, and I just think that the increase in Specs Lele and Archosaur being where it is in the tier, Magnezone being as common. I think that's the big thing too, Magnezone being really common in the tier too, and I think that Shed Shell is a really bad item. Though I used it yesterday, I still think Shed Shell is a really bad item, specifically on birds, and my main reason is that these guys come in on Weavile a lot. So at least you can do damage with Rocky Helmet, or if they come in on Urshifu a lot, at least you can do damage with Rocky Helmet. Whereas if you have a Shed Shell and they go for knockoff, well that's it, you're doubling every time. Now of course, I have seen some speedy Skarmories with Body Press to beat Magnezone, but even then, defensive Magnezones will just run Iron Defense and beat it 1v1 and just run Discharge. So, however, in the UU tier, I like it a lot. One of the best ground types. Both Excadrill just fell down, and then we have Crocodile as well. Beaten, 1v1, really nice. And they obviously, the other Steel Flying Bird, so Steel has A+ rank, so Skarmory is going to be nice just for defensive. That's on balance, it's going to be incredible. There's no reason why Skarmory will be bad, period. Skarmory was UU for a bit anyway during the Tyranitar drop meta as well, and it was an Aegislash drop meta. It was still really good during that meta game as a rude check, a Tangrowth answer, like Salah mentioned, if it's physical, but they're usually special type of thing. It's going to be really good. It's going to be really good in this tier. It's going to have its nice little home in UU. I don't think it's going to drop from UU at all. Slowking has fallen from OU to UU. I think this has to do with the fact that, well, one, Lele's are running Thunderbolt sometimes as well, and Thunder. But also, the Galarian Slowking is probably one of the better of the Slow Bros, or the Slow family right now. Mainly because it doesn't lose to Freeze Dry Specs Kyurem. If you want to use Slowking on a team and be able to beat Kyurem, you have to use Slowking plus another Regenerator Pokemon. And if I'm at that point, like, I mean, I can't use Slowking plus Toxapex. I'm talking about the other one, by the way. I'm talking about regular Slowking, the one that fall. But I just don't think it's as good at checking what it's supposed to. Urshifu's really good, and that Mon takes way too much from U-turn. Weavile is at the highest. Freaking Landorus eats his hits and just knocks off its item or Toxic, especially Def Landorus doesn't care either. I don't think it's as good, and I think that the other Galarian Slowking actually provides so much more, not only absorbing T-Spikes, but also being able to switch into Kyurem. And that's a Mon you can run plus another Regenerator Pokemon and be fine as well. Like that plus Torn is fine or as well. They don't really overlap in a sense. I just think in weaknesses, I just think they're really, really solid. I really do. And Blacephalon being where it is, the Bolt Beaker being where it is too, and just being weak to it, I think it's really easy to take advantage of that Pokemon personally. Whereas in UU, though, it will have a nice little home, considering Keldeo is a top tier threat. It's a Pokemon that can just sit on Celesteela and teleport out. I think it just provides a lot. I like it. I like Galarian Slowbro, by the way, is like 8 rank in the tier. But like future sites are going to be good. And just being able to do that. Obviously still have to worry about the knockoffs and stuff. There's a lot of giant physical threats in that tier. But being able to naturally check Keldeo without even investment is really cool. All you need is max HP and you just check Keldeo. So I like that a lot. And you might even see more defensive pivoting sets rise. So I'm excited to see how that goes. I think that it's also a good check to Volcanion in the tier unless it's toxic. And it's decent versus rain as well. So there's just like a lot this Pokemon can do in the tier. Swampert has finally fallen into you. Team player, you were doing your best. You really were. I just think it's, again, very similar. It's a Stealth Rocket that doesn't beat Corviknight and also takes damage from Rocky Helmet when it flip turns. Landorus and Garchomp are the two best Stealth Rockets in the tier, and then you have Heatran and Ferrothorn right behind them. Or at least in the same vicinity, right? They're all top 5 in terms of Stealth Rock. Swampert's very easily wear down. Doesn't offer a lot of defensive utility at the moment because Kyurem, as good as it is, Archzolt doesn't always run Freeze Dry, but sometimes they do. There's one Hail Team running around with Archzolt with Freeze Dry, so then they can't even beat that set. If it gets Blizzard, it dies to Freeze Dry after. Kyurem is, like I said, as good as it is. Torn is rising up a lot, and you can knock it off. Can't really beat Toxapex and Clef. I think the bulk up set has still a lot of potential as well, but I think your ability to beat the Defoggers and your inability, to beat the Defoggers and your lack of recovery. I really wish they gave Swampert like recover. I really do. I know. Excuse me again. I'm sorry. I'm just a little tired. I know that they differentiate the ground waters, right? Like Seismitoad, Gastrodon, Swampert, they're all different. Quagsire, they're all different from each other. But man, Gastrodon and Quagsire get recovered. Just give it to Swampert and Seismitoad too, so we can just do this, okay? Stop messing with me, Game Freak. Let's just do it. All right. But yeah, in terms of how I think it'll be in UU, solid. It's just a solid Stealth Rocker, Flip Turner, Earthquake, or just I think if your balance needs a Stealth Rocker that gives you momentum for the team, and you don't want to use a Jetpack Como or something like that. It was like a joke. Nobody's going to be using that. Yeah, solid mon overall. I think it'll just be solid. I think there's nothing really else with that one. From UU to RU, we have Grimmsnarl. So, Grimmsnarl was C+ rank, right up there. I know the lower tiers have Light Clay banned, so I'm not sure how that's going to be in RU personally. Maybe Choice Band and Bulk Up Grimmsnarl can actually be pretty decent. Considering Reuniclus is the best Pokemon on the tier and Grimmsnarl like shuts it down hard, maybe it's not that bad. Really, like maybe Bulk Up sets and like I said, Choice Band could be pretty decent. But again, in terms of Light Clay, I'm fairly confident it's banned in the lower tiers. So I don't think you'll be having the dual screen support that you would see. I could be wrong. But you can still do 4 turns if you want, or 3 turns in that case, right? Because you set it up, and you got to set up the other one, and you have 3 turns left, and you got to switch. Oh, God, that's so terrible. Don't use that. Just use Roarveil. That's why people use Roarveil if they have to. But bulk up sets seem interesting. The tier has, like, I don't know. I mean, it beats Umbreon 1v1, can sub bulk up Prankster and stuff like that. It can be certain Pokemon. I think it's decent. I think it has potential. I really do. I think it's going to be one of those Pokemon that should be explored a little bit. So, RU mains, are you ready? Now, sorry, just explore it and let me know, because I do think it has bulk up potential as well. In terms of why it fell from UU, I never really liked like Grimmsnarl's sustainability. I feel it doesn't really do much versus these guys. It doesn't do much versus anything. Even if it naturally beats them by typing, like it just gets worn down, man. It loses to Amoonguss. It's a big thing. Whatever. These are the coolest shifts, I think, and I'm actually going to be hopefully having a live tomorrow with them. But from RE to NU, Doublade, Regidrago, and Snorlax. So let's skip Doublade for a second. Let's skip Doublade, and well, I guess we can go to Doublade real quick. It's crazy because Doublade usually does find its place in the RU tier, being able to check Pokemon like Gardevoir and stuff like that. And I'm talking about like previous generations and physical attackers and things like that. But the top Pokemon all beat it, and Crobat just turns on out of it, right? Incineroar is very common as well. You have Nidoqueen in the tier 2, and I just think that the power creep has gone a little bit too much to the point where Doublade can't Swords Dance. And in terms of utility, if I wanted a defensive steel type, I could always use Steelix. I could always use Bronzong, even though that's lower tier. And obviously there's Lord Registeel and Metagross as well. I just think it doesn't do enough. However, the one I'm excited about, and it's probably going to be quick ban, but who knows? Who knows? I know they're going to be voted on by this Sunday, and that's both Regidrago and Snorlax. Regidrago fell from RU. Togekiss is one of the best Pokemon in the RU tier. Does that mean that Regidrago is bad? No, not at all. I've had, I mean, if you guys saw the live where I got number 1, did I get number 1 with Regidrago? I feel like I got number 1 with Regidrago. I think I got number 1 with Regidrago. Maybe it was something else. Maybe that was the one with Zoroark. I think I did Zoroark plus Regidrago. But I was able to beat Togekiss teams and stuff like that too. But Togekiss is really difficult to use Regidrago in my opinion when a Fairy type is one of your best Pokemon. And then you have Registeel as well in the tier 2. And then you have another Fairy type and Mimikyu in the tier. So there's a lot of Fairy types in this tier. There's good defensive steals. And it just makes it really hard to just click what this mon's supposed to do. Right? It's literally supposed to click Dragon Energy and Nuke you because of its ability as well, and choice specs and stuff like that, or choice scarf. So it's fallen down to NU though. And that is really exciting because, well, NU has some really good checks. Diancie and Sylveon, or counters rather, Diancie and Sylveon. I mean, it's not hard to wear these guys down. Diancie gets lured by like every Pokemon. Diancie literally loses to Heavy Slam Guzzlord, a Pokemon that should have no business beating that Pokemon, right? So it's really interesting to see because otherwise the tiers Fairy types are, and I play a lot of NU. I'll read down the tiers Fairy types just so you guys know. We have Comfey, we have Diancie, and then we have Sylveon, and that's it. So everything else, so you better run your damn Fairy on your team. And the thing is, those Fairies I already ran. You see that they're top 10 in usage anyway. But everything else just absolutely destroyed. So I'm really excited to see how that mod performs. And it could be quick ban. It could be quick ban just because overall, I don't think it's going to be that hard to beat both Sylveon and Diancie at all. It's never that hard when we play Pokemon anyway. And then the other ones just beat it. I wish they gave this thing something. I wish Regidrago had like a move called Kill Fairy or something like that, or like a Dragon move that hits Fairy types for neutral. It'd be banned. It'd be 130% banned. I bet you even Dragon Dance sets, like sub Dragon Dance sets, look pretty good too, because you probably set up on Bronzong with your stupid high HP stat. You can sub on Toxics and stuff like that too. Snorlax is going to be really interesting because the fighters in the tier are really good, right? You have Sirfetchington's right up there as well, and has Leak as well, so it can crit too if it really wants to. And then you have the Passimian here too, and then you have like Snorlax beats Talonflame 1v1, right? It doesn't care about Burn because of Facade. It doesn't care about Salazzle. It doesn't really care too much about Drippy, and if it starts cursing. And then in terms of other physical Pokemon you have in tier, you have Golurk, which if you go Poltergeist or not Earthquake, it gets set up on you. And then you have Toxicroak in the tier 2. So like a lot of the good physical Pokemon besides like the ones I'm naming get beat 1v1 by Lack. So this is gonna be, there's champion in the tier 2. This is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be really interesting. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how Snorlax is overall busted or not. And I'm not talking too much about why it fell down. Because I didn't play enough RU for to really know. But I mean, I just see a plethora of fighting types in top tiers, and I see a lot of Pokemon that can beat Snorlax 1v1 in the right scenarios, like Reuniclus and Togekiss and stuff like that, like special attackers that can beat it in the right scenarios as well. And I see a lot of great fighters in this tier too. Holy crap, maybe that's why. It was still considered B+ rank, which is nice, but I mean, it is based on three months of usage at the end of the day. But yeah, I'm going to leave it at that, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the drops and stuff. Let's see how the Uber's usage stats are looking. Are they still exactly the same? Evelt's number 1, Necrozma number 2, Calyrex number 3, Eternus number 4. Yep, all exactly the same. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed. Thank you. Oh, Silvally-Steel moving up from PU is really interesting considering he's top 10. I did use a lot of Silvally-Steel as well. But yeah, hope y'all enjoy. Let me know your thoughts on the tier shifts. Let me know what you guys think about UU and you know how it's going to be. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.